Some 35% of American Jews, that's slightly over 2.5 million, identify themselves as Reform Jews, making it by far the biggest religious Jewish denomination in the community. But the numbers don't tell the full story. There is, in fact, growing concern within the movement about its future, amid a drop in synagogue and Hebrew school attendance and a growing disaffection or disinterest even among younger congregants with the State of Israel. Our senior U.S. correspondent Mike Wagenheim attended a recent meeting of the Reform National Leadership in New York to discuss those issues, and he filed this report.
Reform Judaism is far and away the largest Jewish movement in the United States, but its leaders are sounding the alarm on a number of issues, including a growing distance between the movement and the State of Israel, and a deprioritizing of Jewish education among its young congregants. They gathered here in Manhattan last week to talk about how to recharge Reform Judaism. Around 300 Reform rabbis and leaders came on relatively short notice to talk about what they say is an inflection point in the movement, with synagogue attendance and revenue heading down.
In honesty, we've been at inflection points pretty much throughout our 150 years as the Reform movement here in North America. And I think we're just at a moment where we want to strengthen all the bonds that hold us together, that hold the North American Jewish community to Israel, that holds us all together here in North America, and to think about the big questions of who we are as a global Jewish people, and what does it mean to be Reformed is key.
We chose to identify on this conference on three broad central questions. One, the distancing from Israel and Zionism. Two, the restoration of the proper balance between the universal impulses of Judaism and the Reform movement, and the particularistic impulses of Judaism. And then the third issue that is a critical issue for us in terms of the synagogues, the future of the synagogues, is what is our theology and what is our religious practice and belief and rituals that is suitable and recharged and refreshed for the 21st century.
The conference featured keynote addresses and panel discussions, many of which focused on the identity of the Reform movement, which has often come to be identified by the concept of tikkun olam, or repairing the world. Critics say it's simply left-wing social justice politics wrapped up in Judaism, while proponents say it reflects Jewish values, if not traditional practice.
Our job as Reformed Jews is to keep Judaism relevant. I could just say it's been the job of rabbis for thousands of years to do that. So we're doing our job. The Jewish community wasn't ready for women rabbis. We said over 50 years ago, it's time. The Jewish community was certainly thinking that we couldn't make changes to liturgy or how we observe. We've made those changes out of deep commitment, not out of making it simpler to be Jewish, but how to make it more meaningful. So I don't think that change is something to disparage. And I think we haven't strayed from, we've strayed to Judaism.
First of all, social justice is important for all Jews. It should be important for all Jews. It exists from the very origins of Judaism. And so what we need to do in the modern world, and what our movement needs to do, is to understand that one flows out of the other. And social justice, universal impulses, need to be grounded in the centrality of Jewish people.
Well, the leaders we spoke with here say it's not about rebooting or retreating from Reform Judaism. It's about recharging it. Reporting from the Stephen Wise Free Synagogue in Manhattan, Mike Wagenheim, I-24 News.
And Mike Wagenheim also spoke last week in New York at the Be'Sheva conference with Israel's Minister of Diaspora Affairs, Amichai Shikli, on the subject of anti-Semitism and the minister's relationship with elements of the U.S. Reform Jewish community.
One of the struggles the Biden White House had when releasing its recent plan to combat anti-Semitism was how to actually define anti-Semitism. Well, that same problem exists in Israel. And here at the Jerusalem conference in New York on Sunday, I spoke with Amichai Shikli, the minister for this government in charge of the struggle against anti-Semitism.
The main anti-Semitism that we see today, it is an attempt to deny the right of the Jewish people to have their own sovereign state.
But the other major portion of Shikli's ministerial portfolio involves diaspora affairs, and he recently put together a plan to forward $40 million from Israel's budget to North American Jewish schools specifically to train the next generation of educators.
If you don't have Jewish and Zionist education, it is very hard to stand strong against this accusation. It is very hard to stand and fight for the truth if you don't know the history.
Now, of course, it's quite difficult to connect with American Jewry circumventing the Reform Jewish movement, a movement that Chikli has been quite critical of in the past and even in his role as the current Minister of Diaspora Affairs. I asked him if there is a path forward between him and the Reform movement in the U.S.
I'm not suggesting that the entire Reform movement is anti-Zionist, and I never said it, but you can see that some segments of it do go back to the origin of the movement as a counter-national movement.
And Mike also spoke with one of the most prominent American Jewish politicians in Washington, the Democratic Senator from Maryland, Ben Cardin, son of the noted American Jewish activist Shoshana Cardin. The senator, who has announced that this is his final term in Congress, discussed anti-Semitism and how Jewish values have informed his own life.
I think those values of Tikkun Olam, Tzedakah have been my guideposts throughout my legislative career. I've always tried to make this world a better place and help those that are less fortunate. And it really started with my Jewish background and the values that I learned in my home. I was pleased to see the Biden administration come out with that comprehensive plan. It's very clear that everyone needs to be together on this, all the agencies of government working with the private sector. We can never normalize anti-Semitism or trivialize anti-Semitism. And I think the recommendations that are made there to strengthen the coalitions with other marginal groups, to show leadership against any act of anti-Semitism,